Hello, guys. Eric here with Kim. We're going to do our spoiler-free review of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So we're going to discuss the movie, but anything we discuss has been in the trailers, has been part of the promotion of the movie. We will do a much longer spoiler chat after the film opens, so look for that. But let's dive in here and talk about Shang-Chi. You probably have the gist of this movie if you've been watching any of the promotion, but we've got Simu Liu here playing the main character. We can meet him. He's kind of a underachiever, I would say, living in San Francisco, but he's holding on to a secret. He is really the son of a guy who is a criminal mastermind, also happens to be immortal, as you do in the MCU, and he will quickly kind of be pulled back in by his father to some stuff going on with his family. He will be reunited with them, whether he likes it or not. And along for the ride is Awkwafina, has Katie, his best friend, who accompanies him as he begins to travel back home. So that is your basic setup here for Shang-Chi. Let me ask you, Kim, what are your overall thoughts on this movie?
Okay, so lots of things to talk about with this movie. Overall thoughts. I felt that there were some great early action sequences. Mm-hmm. And it was a really promising start with some great comedy and chemistry between Simu Liu and Awkwafina. But this gives way to a story that lulls for me because it's mainly told via exposition and some flashbacks before it culminates in this kind of clunky CGI heavy finale.
So it's funny. I understand every complaint you have. Though some strike me more than others. I really like this movie overall. And also I should say, I benefit, I think, from having seen it twice because some of my complaints are still there, but the second time I saw it, they softened. I do think my biggest issue with the movie is one of pacing, because I really admire that they don't want it to be a typical origin story, right? They don't want to tell it in chronological order with he is a young man, he is being trained, this, that. And I like that about the movie. I do think the way they use the flashbacks, which is very heavy, sometimes kills the pacing. That sometimes you kind of feel like momentum on the movie is built, and then there's another flashback. And some of those flashbacks are really good, but I did feel like a start-stop a lot throughout the film that hurt for me. The second half, I don't want, I will be a little vague on, but I'll say I enjoyed the second half, I think, a bit more than you, just because I like that they didn't show a lot of it in the trailers, that there was some genuine surprises, even though, and I think we'll get back to this a little bit, I thought the fight scenes were most strongest in the first half. That was where I think it really shined there. Let me ask you about the characters, though. I was thinking about it, and seems to me like the first MCU movie since since Ant-Man to introduce such a new world, because even Captain Marvel had Ronan, had Nick Fury. This one is pretty much all the main characters are brand new people to us. So what did you think of them, starting, of course, with the title character, Shang-Chi?
Yeah, I love Shang-Chi and Katie. And I love the way they were introduced in the film. We meet them in San Francisco, as you said, that they're both underachievers. Yeah. And it allows for an introduction that's really kind of warm. They're funny, they've got this great chemistry. And though Shang-Chi is kind of the straight man to Awkwafina's Katie, I don't think his character suffers from that. His charisma, his natural charisma still shines through. And there's something really, really warm about him. He's kind of ordinary, and yet, as we discover, also extraordinary, which is really nice to see on the screen. And what I love about Katie, amongst many things, is that she's the humor, she's the kind of the fun part, the funnest and the funniest part of the movie. And I love, as you know, I love it when women are allowed to do that in the Marvel movies, especially.
Yeah, agreed on all that. They're really great together. They have this really fun dynamic. These two sort of longtime buddies that I liked a lot. He is, Simu Liu is, new to a lot of people, and people know Kim's Convenience, but a lot of like international movie audiences will be introduced to him through this. super charming, super likable, credible as a my phone is ringing. Very credible as a action star. Again, I keep saying we'll get to the fights more, which we will. But I also think that one thing I really like about this movie is that his sister is way more prominent than I expected. Xia Ling is the character, and that also we get into her and her story and what she feels about everything with their father. So I really like that at some points it's kind of the three of them with Katie, with Aquafina, traveling together or working together. And I thought that was really cool that it's like the movie's called Shang-Chi, he is the main character, but we really get to know all these people very well. The other person I want to talk about, though, a lot because he's kind of the title character, another title character, it's called And the Legend of the Ten Rings. This is their big connection to MCU lore because the Ten Rings go back to Iron Man 1, and then Iron Man 3, of course, delved into them a lot. So let's talk about Wenwu here, who is played by Tony Leung, who's a big part of the movie. As I said, he's very powerful. He's got these mystical rings. He's been around for like 1,000 years. Big part of the movie. What did you think of him as a villain here? Especially, I think MCU villains have been very dissected in the past. So how do you think he stacks up here?
Well, he certainly doesn't bring the humor like some of the other characters. But what he does bring, Tony Leung, is this masterful kind of commanding presence. And I loved that about him. I mean, it's hard to see him as a villain because you really understand, they dive into the backstory and, obviously I'm not going to spoil anything. And you can kind of see that there's room for redemption here. I'm trying not to spoil anything.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, I mean, I don't really see him as the villain. The villain is the final creature that they battle at the end for me, and that was a letdown. I don't want to get ahead of myself. What did you think of him?
I loved him. Yeah, I thought he was one of the best. I will use the term villain as an easy term, even though I do think, he has. I guess the thing is, I like that he had a lot of nuance, and there was, it's a little bit reminiscent of Killmonger, just in the way of like you kind of get where he's coming from, even if you don't agree with, again, he does some terrible things. We also see he's single-minded about like what he wants, and so he doesn't really care about collateral damage. So he is certainly a threat. But we also see what is motivating him. He brings a lot, just with his performance. Like you said, he is purposely not made to be like a funny villain, and that's fine. There's plenty of humor in the movie. Instead, we see that he kind of has like a little bit of a weight of the world on his shoulders feel to him, and he has this sadness to him, but he also, can feel very threatening. So yeah, I really liked him. I thought he was a really, especially, we talked a lot about in the past how some of the MCU movies, introduce these villains that feel kind of like, because they put so much work into the heroes, they make them so wonderful and likable. Sometimes the villains kind of suffer, or antagonists. I'll say that, antagonists. And so Wenwu, I think, is one of their best as far as right out of the gate, just feeling like there's a lot here.
Well, actually, that this is one of the reasons that the film didn't end up quite working for me, is because his story is so important and interesting in this film, and yet it's almost entirely told through exposition and these flashback sequences, and I kind of want the story that I'm watching in this film to be more focused on him. And maybe at the end we could introduce Shang-Chi.
You wanted just the Legend of the Ten Rings.
That's what I wanted, yeah. Sorry, Shang-Chi, I love you and I want to see you in the future. But for this story, I would have liked, more time spent in his time, in his father's time, in real time.
The new title is The Legend of the Ten Rings and then Shang-Chi. We've talked a bit about it, but let's talk a little bit more about the fights, because clearly if you were making a movie about a martial artist expert, someone who the comic books called the master of kung fu in his original comics, you have a lot that you need to deliver. So what do you think? You talked a bit about it, but talk a little bit more about what you thought about the approach to the fight scenes overall, and whether they worked for you.
Yeah, oh my God, that scene that, you know, on the bus that we've seen bits of in the trailer
Yeah.
at the beginning was amazing. What a way to kind of start a film. It's not right at the start, but you know,
Pretty early
it's
though.
in, yeah, San Francisco, the San Francisco moments. And I just blew me away. That whole thing, there's, you know, and it's kind of a perfect balance. The fighting was great, and then you've got the injection of humor from Katie and also the guy that's filming the action on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I love about this film and a lot of the MCU movies is the casting of those really small minor characters. Yeah. Another one later on is Ronnie Cheng in the guy that's running the book in the underground fight club. So that was that, and then the scaffolding sequence, that whole big set piece was also awesome, and also the flashbacks of his father fighting with you know who would become his wife.
Yeah.
Was beautiful, and it reminded me of films like Hero, the choreography and the way it was shot. So great, you know. And then so for the finale to be as disappointing to me and CGI heavy as it was a letdown.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean in that the best fights are in the first half of the movie, and they are great. The three you mentioned are the standouts, I think. The bus, the one on the scaffolding, and then the one of his parents, which is very purposefully, you know, done like a dance because it's two characters fighting that are also like they're like flirt fighting, and it's really well done. And those scenes on the bus and the scaffolding really show off this character. Shang-Chi has incredibly, you know, formidable, a great fighter, but also like moving quickly. You know, I know that there was they talked about the sort of influence of Jackie Chan movies on it, and you know, I believe Brad Allen, the late Brad Allen, who did choreography on this and worked with Jackie Chan, that you see a lot of that influence in how his coat comes off and on, and he's using things around him as weapons. It's so fun and so great. I guess it's like I really like the stuff in the second half as far as going into a more sort of fantastical place. But I also agree with you. I wish there was a way to balance it and to give him at least one more pure fight, you know, that is doesn't have to have all that other stuff involved. Because even though I did enjoy the sort of climactic battle, I think definitely more than you, I also thought that, oh, I wish we could kind of get back a little bit of that early fight stuff too, because it is it's kind of the highlight on the action side for sure, I think. Any other like things jump out at you? Any other major thoughts about the film, Kim?
I mean, I think we're okay to mention the Ben Kingsley cameo.
Yeah, we can. We were talking about this beforehand. It's like they brought him to the premiere. He's doing press for the movie. So yeah, without saying specifics, Ben Kingsley is in this movie.
Yeah. So I think we've joked a lot along the way, you know, as various MCU installments have come out, series and what have you, that Trevor Slattery, there's a comedian in England called Tony Slattery, and I sometimes mix him up.
His brother.
Trevor Slattery would come back, but you know, he actually did. And and he was funny. You know, he gave me a lot of laughter, but I felt that it was kind of a forced thing, a very welcome cameo, but it felt forced. It felt brought in to kind of bring some fun into these bits that I felt lulled. But he also brought us a you know, another kind of double act that I think will become iconic.
Yes. I was very glad to have him here. I will say I looked back at my tweets, and the minute they announced this movie in 2019 at Comic-Con, I said, this means Trevor's coming back, just because I felt like they had to deal with that. And I think it's very fun how they deal with it. And, you know, the movie in general, it's like, you know, they went into this movie saying, we're going to kind of present you with the real Mandarin, the truth behind it all. But I like that they also don't discard everything that they did. I'm a big fan of Iron Man 3. I know that's a very divisive movie with the MCU fandom. I think it's great, and I love the Trevor twist in that movie. So I'm glad that it's still like it still counts. Like there's more to learn in this movie about what was really going on. But Trevor still exists, and Kingsley still seems to be having a ball playing him. So pro Trevor. So yeah, that's I think yeah, those are our overall thoughts. Kim, what would you rate this out of 5 stars?
I mean, because the MCU sets the bar so high, this is going to seem a bit stingy, but I'm going to award it 2.5 stars.
Wow.
But I do love all of those things I said I love, but because of the lulls, the lackluster for me, second half of the movie, and the Tony Leung aside, the villain, the big bad, if you like, which was a disappointment. That's the rationale behind my 2.5 stars.
Understand. Yeah, for me, my big complaint is the pacing in the center of the movie with the flashbacks. I think I embraced the second half a little bit more than you, but yeah, I do think that, yeah, I kind of wish they could have figured out a more graceful way to deliver some of that information. But the movie in its totality works a lot for me, and like I said, it helps. I got to see it a second time and realize that the qualms I had with it weren't overtaking the movie for me. So I will give it a more positive 4 out of 5 for me. I think it is a really strong introduction to a character and a world that we'll be seeing more of within this. Do I have to tell everyone to stay through the credits? Of course I don't. But there's some stuff to see. You should stick around through the credits. Well, Kim, thank you for joining me on the Shang-Chi journey here. And we'll be back with more. Like I said, we will have a spoiler chat after the film opens. We'll give you a few days to watch it. So stick around for that. Thanks, guys. We'll have more for you here at Fandom.